This is Andy Epics, and this is launch commentary of the Kerb-X with Comsat 5. The Kerbal X launch vehicle sits at launch pad 1 at the Kerbal Space Center and is preparing to fly the Comsat 5 mission for the Realistic Design Bureau and the Kerbal National and KNASA. And the Kerbal National Aeronautics and Space Administration. Ay, ay, ay. The Kerb-X mission is launching in T-minus 15, 14, 13, 12, 11, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, ignition, 1, and liftoff of the Kerb-X with Comsat 5, launching a communications satellite into low parking orbit and then geostationary transfer. The Kerb-X has external fuel tanks and 8 external boosters and 8 wings for steering the spacecraft. As we prepare to go into the limited throttle mode, and we have confirmation of the limited throttle mode start. Separation on the first 2 boosters is confirmed. These boosters will not be recovered. As we prepare for the roll program is in. Ignore that in the background. Preparing for second booster separation. Preparing for stage 2 booster sep. Preparing for first stage second set booster sep. Separation on the second set of first stage boosters. As we continue to maintain a nominal flight towards 300 kilometers, as we can hear some of the destruction. As we can see some of the destruction taking place, we can observe the first 2 sets of external boosters as we're now 8 kilometers in altitude and preparing for booster set 3 separation. Standing by for set 3 booster sep. We have about 4 seconds remaining in the second stage in the third set boosters. Separation on the third set of liquid-fueled boosters. As the Kerbal X launch vehicle continues to climb towards an apoapsis of 90 kilometers. We have throttle up to 100%, as the spacecraft is now traveling at 380 meters per second. The first stage is a Rockamax mainsail engine and used 8 LV-30 engines, and it used 8 LV-30 engines. LV something or other engines, I'm not really sure which ones. And the second stage uses a Rockamax Poodle main engine. Spacecraft is at 600 meters per second, 20 kilometers up. The fairing separation is expected to occur at around 65 kilometers. Once stage burnout occurs, the stage will separate, then the fairing separates. Traveling at 800 meters per second orbital velocity, 700 meters per second surface. The upper stage of the payload has communications as well as a 500 kilometer range in which we're able to deorbit the spacecraft. The upper stage will deorbit and return to Kerbal to crash somewhere on the surface. The first stage will impact somewhere on Kerbal in the water, most likely to the east of the Kerbal Space Center. Last launch you observed was GPS 1A1, the first in the A series of GPS satellites. As we prepare for main engine cutoff, which should occur at about the spacecraft has another 40 kilometers of apoapsis to boost before shutdown of the main engine can occur. Once that occurs, the first stage will separate from the launch vehicle. Then the second stage will separate from the launch vehicle. As we prepare for that event, we have shutdown, and stages 1 and 2 have separated. Stage 2 has now entered the coasting phase. These stages are now being adjusted. As the second stage has entered the coast phase, turned on its RCS, and prepares to separate the fairing. As the spacecraft drops out of fifth time acceleration, we have confirmation of a nominal fairing separation. Separation on the fairing looks good as we point the first antenna at the communication satellite 1 in order to provide us short-range communications. We deploy the solar panels and prepare for the burn. In T-minus 13 seconds, the burn will start aboard the Kerbal, and here we go. We have about a half-minute burn. Standing by for upper stage shutdown. Upper stage shutdown is confirmed. Stability is on. Preparing for the maneuver to transfer into geostationary transfer orbit. We have 5 minutes until that burn. Approaching that maneuver. Standing by for confirmation of the burn start. T-minus 18 seconds to the burn. Prior to separation, the spacecraft's main solar arrays will deploy, and the reaction wheel on the upper stage will be engaged. As we now prepare for the nearly 3-hour coast phase, I believe it's about 3 hours. As we prepare for the coast phase, up to the apoapsis. There, leaving Kerbal is an Ariane 5 launcher stage or something like that, I can't remember. But we have begun the coast phase. Then once we move beyond communications range of the first comms satellite, we will go into comms range of number 4, which communicates directly, and then we switch over. The spacecraft will briefly lose connection. As we prepare for the circularization burn, the spacecraft is now firing its RCS jets in order to orient itself into position. As the people at ground control now point the satellite's main dish at the Kerbal X and activate it. Now that spacecraft has communications back. The spacecraft is communicating through launch control. It's communicating through Comsat 4 back to launch control. As it prepares for the circularization burn, This spacecraft is designed to fill the communications gap on Kerbal. As the Kerbal Space Administration prepares for its first manned missions. These communications satellites provide a sufficiently large amount of coverage to Kerbal. As one antenna switches over to cover Kerbal, and one remains locked on a communications satellite. Once the burn has been completed, the satellite's two main solar panels will deploy and prepare for as the spacecraft is separated. This upper stage will return to Kerbal and crash. Preferably in the ocean, but the location cannot be determined at this time. The spacecraft is on a suborbital trajectory as it folds in its solar panels. Or not. As the spacecraft prepares to hit entry interface. And we have entry. We have confirmation of in-atmosphere entry. And we have confirmation of re-entry heat. The solar panels appear to be flipping it around. The spacecraft is coming in at min re-entry velocity. At mun re-entry velocity. 3 kilometers per second. There go the solar panels, ripped off and flying off somewhere, who knows. Just the panels were ripped off, the panel boxes stayed intact. This satellite will cover this gap, the communications gap. The next launch will be from the Cosmodrome, a Proton rocket will launch ScanSat into orbit. The first stage appears to be, the upper stage appears to be surviving rather well. Never mind the fact that it's pulling about 6 Gs of deceleration as it moves supersonic and then subsonic. As it prepares for impact. It's moving at 200 meters per second. It's down below half a Mach, where it will impact. And we have impact. That's the end of that mission. In future missions, the spacecraft crews will begin training in the Soyuz spacecraft, working on the launch abort system procedure. This has been Andy